Hmm. Heyo, welcome to Elden Ring. Today, we're going to take a look at the Gargoyle's Greatsword by completing a run with it and analyzing its damage, moveset, stagger potential, build synergy, and location in order to determine if it's a viable option for a playthrough. Let's get into it. It's time for Gargoyle Gregory! I chose the hero class for its high strength, since the Gargoyle's Greatsword scales best with it. Man, it's been a while, Limgrave. At the beginning of all my runs, I get Torrent, die of fall damage, grab a golden finger, kill Kenny for a golden seed, and then head down to the Weeping Peninsula. I do this so that I can get the Morning Star, a weapon with bleeding which I'll need for later, and then I head over to the third church for the Wondrous Physic. Behind the church is a portal that leads to northeastern Caelid, and from here we can make our way down to the Fort Ferrith. Inside, I grab half of the Dectus Medallion for later, and then grab Radagon's Sword Seal. This talisman is really good for the early game because it boosts our health, stamina, and strength. But the real reason we came here is to wail on this big dragon guy. Normally this would be borderline impossible, but since we have a weapon with bleed, we can do percentage based damage until it's dead. Once they're low, I pop a golden finger that I got earlier to increase the number of runes that they'll drop. And once he's dead, we get almost 100,000 runes. I increase my health to a respectable amount, and then make sure I have enough strength and dexterity to wield the Gargoyle's Greatsword. Afterward, I head back to the Weeping Peninsula to get some Sacred Tears before fighting an Erdtree avatar. It was hitless, almost, but we get some more runes and the opening bubble tier, which essentially saves us a red flask in a fight by negating the first hit we take. Then I head to Stormvale Castle, because unfortunately we'll need to progress the game a bit before we can get our sword. I won't spend much time on these next couple fights because they didn't involve the Gargoyle's Greatsword and they didn't give me any notable trouble. And after Margit, I head over to Godric.
Sing, 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 sing!
Geronimo! After Godric, I head over to Liurnia.
Shit!
I grab part of the secret medallion along the way, and as I make my way to the gate key and through Raya Lucaria, allow me to explain how the viability ranking for location is measured. Essentially, remembrance bosses subtract 2 points out of 10, while noteworthy other bosses subtract 1. This does have some bend to it though. For example, I would count more against a remembrance boss that signifies a progression in the story than a horizontal boss, like killing Morgoth after Godric and progressing the game into the mountains as opposed to moving horizontally and killing Radahn after Godric. Furthermore, I'm going through the game in a way that I would expect the average player to, so that most others could follow my path and try the weapon themselves if they want. So, while I in theory could go kill Radahn at level 15 before Godric, that would be too difficult of a task to expect of the average player. So, I'm gonna go get a bit stronger by clearing Raya Lucaria and leveling up some, because that is how I think the average player would go about obtaining and using the Gargoyle's Greatsword. Too long didn't listen, the more bosses I killed, the worse the ranking for location. Red Wolf was next. They came and they went. What surprised me about Renala is the fact that with the base Wild Strike skill and 0 weapons upgrades, you can easily 2-cycle her first phase. And aside from a few close calls, second phase was pretty easy. Afterwards, I head back to Grail's Dragon Barrow and grab a Sacred Tear on the way to Radahn's Radahn's Festival, but the portal won't open until I've rested at a site of grace in Altus. So I grab the Greenspell Cruciteer, which raises stamina, and then the other half of the Dectus Medallion at Fort Height. I go up the Grand Lift and then grab the first grace I see before taking the portal to Radahn. Yeah, we're gonna have to get a bit stronger. So I head over to this cave and kill its boss, which allows me to buy Smithing Stones 1 and 2 to upgrade my weapon to +6. Then I head over to this cave, which lets me buy Smithing Stones 3 and 4. But I don't have enough runes to upgrade it. So I complete Varia's quest and get the Pureblood Knight's Medal, which allows me to teleport over to Mogwyn Palace. And now that I'm here, I can grind runes with this bird. With those runes, I upgrade the axe to +12. Now that I'm actually doing respectable damage, I'm able to get past Radahn with a few more tries. Now that he's dead, I can head down to Nokron. I kill the Mimic, and now there's only one more boss until I have the weapon I need for this video. If this fight was only one Valiant Gargoyle, it would have been decently easy and fun. But once you get them down to about half health, their friend joins. To make it worse, these guys are meant to be standalone bosses, so just throwing them together in the same boss arena doesn't really work well. You end up spending a lot of time just trying to lure out the one with lower health. This combined with their annoying poison miss attack makes for a pretty unfair and unfun boss, and truthfully, the fights with 2 standalone bosses that don't mesh well together is one of my biggest gripes with Elden Ring. Other than that, I actually quite like fighting the gargoyles one-on-one. Eventually I decided that since I was trading a lot of hits and taking poison damage, some armor would really help. It took quite a good many tries, but eventually I was able to beat the gargoyle duo. Now that I finally have the Greatsword, I upgrade it all the way to +12. The Gargoyle's Greatsword has a standard Greatsword moveset with vertical light attacks and horizontal heavy attacks. Its main draw, though, is its Ash of War Vacuum Slice. Back in Altus, I tested the Gargoyle's Greatsword against his Morgoth rejection. I must say, the damage the Ash of War does, especially when the sword hits too, is quite good. And it also does really good stance damage. And after a short tussle, he goes down, and we obtain some runes and a temporary talisman that raises stamina. Next is the DTS, and the Gargoyle's Greatsword really shines here. I almost even beat him first try, but I made a dumb mistake. The second try goes better, and I gotta say the Vacuum Slice Ash of War is pretty good. It's strong and fast, and even has some range. It doesn't use too much FP, but I have almost 0 points in mine, so I can't use it very many times so I have to replenish. I can already tell it was worth the wait. At this point, I have 40 health, so I took off Bredagon's Sword Seal. My strength is pretty high, but unfortunately you can't infuse a Gargoyle's Greatsword with a heavy infusion without losing its innate Ash of War, so that really sucks. I also allocated Blue Flask so that I can throw off more Vacuum Slices. I make my way through the capital and then fight this Tree Spirit. Between jump attacks and Vacuum Slices, the Gargoyle's Greatsword really does have good stance damage. If you didn't know, this Tree Spirit actually drops an easy 60,000 runes. I received a Shockwave backshot and then begin the fight with Godfrey. Unfortunately, the heavy jump attack isn't quick enough to punish a stomp, but the I'm so rusty. But the light attack is. Furthermore, the Vacuum Slice is quick enough to have good use. Between that and its Greatsword moveset, it has a very nice and flowing playstyle. And after a brief and marvelous fight, Godfrey goes down. Morpheed is up next. Again, our damage is quite good, but the real question is if the sword is fast enough to keep up with Morgoth's never-ending chains. I think it is, especially with the Vacuum Slice offering a viable ranged counterattack. Phase 2 starts, and honestly, it just gives more windows for attack. I let a critical stance break and the fight is over soon after. I leave Leyendell, but I went back to the round table hold to pick up a first piece of armor. If you squint hard enough, you can kinda see what I'm going for. Oh hey, speak of the devil. Now that we have access to the Zamor ruins, we can head down here and grab another bell bearing that lets us upgrade to plus 18. I travel to the first church and across the chain toward the fire giant, but before that I take a little detour. Oh my god! I take a detour to the giant conquering hero's grave and fight the Vantablack giant before fighting the boss of the dungeon. The Gargoyle's Greatsword did great damage to him, and the range attack was useful, not to mention the great poise damage. It really didn't take long, and as a reward, I get the item that I came all the way here for. Rags. Yep. They look kinda gargoyle-y though, right? With that out of the way, the fire giant is up. Our damage is quite solid, and the slow moveset of the fire giant allows for multiple high power slashes and vacuum slices. After not much time at all, a hitless first phase concludes. The second phase is a battle of attrition, and while bleed is the best for this, the Gargoyle's Greatsword does reasonable enough damage to not make me lose my mind. Unfortunately, I make a bad blunder which cost me my first try award. There's not really much for me to show for this fight, it's just me repeatedly wailing on his ankles. It takes a while, but no, god damn it! Finally! Yo, I haven't done that in like... You got a little something on you there. The gods can do are next in the list, and I have the same issues with them that I did with the twin gargoyles. Having to play super passive and lure one out isn't that fun. Vacuum Slice makes it a bit easier to do damage at least though. Yup, dodging that was all skill, no luck. When second phase begins, it's really easy to punish Fatty with Vacuum Slice. It also allows me to punish this move from Skinny, and the Gargoyle's Greatsword good stance damage procs a super awesome stance break on my first attempt. Unfortunately though, that great run is cut short by greed. It really can be understated how surprisingly good the stance damage is in this weapon. With its attack speed, you wouldn't expect so many guard breaks.
Nice.
Honestly though, this fight isn't too bad, at least not with the Gargoyle's Greatsword, so long as you're constantly aware and spacing well. And once one is dead, you can just focus on one and cycle, which is much easier than the 2v1.
Boom! Let's go.
I grab and equip the Dragon Crest Great Shield plus 2 talisman on the way to Malekith, but there's some other things to do before them now that the duo is dead. Using the runes and bell bearing, I buy stones to upgrade the sword to plus 24. And then I grab an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone and max it out. I talk to Alexander and then kill the snake and talk to Alexander before talking to Alexander and watching him go kaput. This rewards us with a Shard of Alexander, which boosts Vacuum Slice by 15%. I head back to Stormvale and scare some birds to get the Claw Talisman, which boosts jump attack by 15%. Now it's time for Malekith, but before then we have an old friend to face off against. But our damage this time is even higher and makes this fight a joke. With him out of the way, it's finally time for Malekith. Malekith is super fast, but our damage is actually pretty insane. Even the basic jump attacks do good damage. You do have to be a bit careful though. Bearing that in mind, Vacuum Slice is still quick enough to pull off. I get a stance where I can go into phase 2, but I have never seen him spawn in the middle like this for phase 2. I get fried, but I have a really good phase 1 on my subsequent attempt. He also went back to starting phase 2 like he usually does, so I have no idea what the last time was about. He does get stuck in a pillar though. He's even faster in phase 2, but Vacuum Slice is still able to keep up. One super sexy stance break later and the fight gets put in the bag.
Let's go.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
At this point, I'm almost level 90 and I have 50 strength and 46 vigor. I head over here and go to this tree branch to get the Erd Tree Favor plus 2, which is our final talisman and replaces our stamina talisman from earlier. For most runs, getting is either almost impossible or mind-numbingly easy. Luckily, Vacuum Slice places this run more toward the latter since it has range and stun locks Gideon. Naturally, there's still some bullshit to be had. The biggest of which is a spell that he has that makes him blow up after receiving a lot of damage, which breaks him out of stun locks and does absurd damage. I didn't have a real strategy for this fight besides watching out for that spell specifically, and after a few tries and some luck he falls. Continuing with the boss count is Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Mwah, this fight was wonderful. Our damage is great and the Gargoyle's Greatsword moveset continues to really shine with its speed and Ash of War. Its range also opens up more damage windows. Combined with the stance damage, this fight really just shows off the best of the Gargoyle's Greatsword. Second phase goes a little different.
Oh shit.
This right here really shows everything I was talking about earlier all in one. It's fast and the damage output is significantly better than expected. And it's still good in phase 2 as well. You'd think I'd be tired of that noise by now, but man, it's still just music to my ears. A little bit later and the Lumen is down. But we're not going to beat the game quite yet, we still have some unfinished business to attend to. Before we end the game, we're going to fight some extra bosses to test how the Gargoyle's Greatsword holds up even against the strongest bosses in the game. And the first of those is Flaccid Sax. This guy is an absolute tank, and he's going to take a while to beat even with our good damage output. One out of 2 of our FP bars have been consumed, and he's only lost a fifth of his health. A few more vacuum slices, and we get a stance break, which takes out a satisfying amount of his health. At this point, I start heading toward the walls of the arena so that I can punish one of his big attacks later on. Once he comes down, we can just walk backwards and avoid all of his attacks until he's done teleporting. I wail on him a bit more until he roars and disappears, a sign that his big move that I mentioned earlier is coming. Normally, he has a crazy cinematic laser move, but since I let him into a wall, I can avoid it and get behind him and beat down on him throughout its entire duration. It's not long after that he's conquered like the rest. Next on the naughty list is Moog. The damage is certainly workable, and our attacks are fast enough to be able to punish him. And of course, Vacuum Slice continues to be the GOAT, saving my greedy ass when I need it most. I didn't bring the tier that negates his nihilism because I was lazy, but it should be fine. Assuming I can remember how to play the game. The second phase is a lot cleaner in my second run, with me even getting some point-blank vacuum slices. This fight really wasn't that bad, in fact it was actually quite fun. Thanks for the shower, Moog. While I'm heading toward Melania, let me explain why I'm not fighting the lesser Remembrance bosses. Essentially, showing the weapon off against the higher echelon of bosses would make fighting the lesser Remembrance bosses redundant. Like, if I can whoop Moog's ass with the weapon, why fight the regal ancestral spirit? It's obviously going to be a cakewalk. Oh my god, leave me alone! Unfortunately, I gotta deal with this guy to get the other half of the secret medallion. I hit a super juicy vacuum slice to take out the offense man, and then another to take out the defense man. Killing his elves made Santa pretty mad, but I have something he doesn't know about. Just kidding, eat this vacuum slice, asshole. But for real though, this fight was pretty much just jump and vacuum slice spam. Being able to punish from a distance was really helpful for this fight, as well as the fact that I got like 3 staggers. With the other half of the secret medallion in tow, I went down the elevator and into the consecrated snowfield. To get to Melania, you have to complete the minigame in the Evergale at Ordina, which involves lighting some fires and getting pissed off. I take the portal and head to the Hallow Tree.
Oh my god.
Where we encounter our next boss, Loretta. Quite frankly, the damage is absurd. There's really not that much to say about this fight. It only lasted like a minute. I've hit 60 health and strength by this point, so for the rest of the run I'll just put runes in the stamina. I dip down into this building to get our actual final talisman, which is just an upgrade to our Dragon Crest talisman. Look, I like swag as much as the next guy, if not more, but for this fight I'll need to be able to light roll so I can only keep on the gauntlets. First things first, the vacuum slice's damage is beautiful and fast enough to be used. On some windows, that is. It's been a super long time since I fought Melania, so my rust was super evident, but with that considered, I was really impressed that I was able to survive an end-lag point-blank waterfall dance on my first go.
Oh my god, I actually dodged it. Holy shit.
The second waterfall dance was even hitless. Unfortunately though, the rust caught back up with me.
No!
I did a good few many times, but I wanted to show you guys the winning fight in depth so you can truly understand how great the Gargoyle's Greatsword is. The fight started off fairly normally, and the Gargoyle's Greatsword was putting up pretty numbers. While you can vacuum slice his move without being punished, it's too slow for most of our other windows, so a jump attack is used instead. After the guard break, I back up because I feel like she's about to use Waterfowl. Don't ask me how I know, it just felt right. Something I learned from the other runs is that using a throwable object that causes her to dodge almost always causes Waterfowl dance, assuming it's not on cooldown. This lets me perfectly dodge Waterfowl, except for a minor hit from being an idiot. The fight continues as normal before she pulls out a second Waterfowl dance, this time at medium range. Luckily, I'm far enough away to dodge it the same way I did the first time. I use my first and last blue potion and then greedily wrap up hitless phase 1. Scarlet Aeonia is punishable by vacuum slice, leading to a lot of free damage whenever she uses it. This combined with the fact that now some of our smaller attack windows from before lead to big attack windows means that the second phase is actually kinda easier. I go to punish a punishable move, but my freaking astute spidey senses tell me that she's about to do Waterfowl. I was right. I got lucky here, but make sure to always aim your attacks, kids. Soon after, I get caught in a small end-lag close-range Waterfowl dance, and I unfortunately take some of my first hits this fight. Her wings also kind of obscure one of her attacks, and I take some more damage. She unleashes another Scarlet Aeonia, but unfortunately I ran out of FP for free damage. Almost all of my phase 2 damage is coming from this damage window right here. Waterfowl number 5. Heal number 3. And Scarlet Aeonia number 3. The fight continues per usual, but I have a final greedy mishap in the last critical second. Phew, there we go.
Extraordinary.
Wow.
With the runes, I level up to about 120, which is the end level for this run. Now it's time to put an end to this. As always, the damage is certainly workable. I was super locked in after Millennia, so Radagon felt pretty easy by comparison. I even land a stance break on him, which is always welcome. But I completely whiffed the punish. He begins his ultimate attack, but if you know how to play it right, it's actually a huge damage window. This has got to be one of the worst feelings in Elden Ring. Radagon goes down with 8 red and 1 blue flask remaining. Oh shit, I forgot to put my armor back on. I'm able to get a lot of damage off on the Elden Beast at the beginning of the fight because I dodged the fire. In fact, I even get a very early stagger. As he pulls out Elden Stars, I try to rotate around the beast so then the stars get stuck on his big bloated body. It doesn't work and I get put in a very dangerous situation, but I come out fine and with Elden Stars gone. I then dodge the triple ring attack while running toward 11 o'clock away from the boss in order to fight it right when they pop out. I actually almost died right at the end, but luckily I passed the vigor check. The jump attack and a moment to aura farm later and the run is complete. So is it viable? Let's check back with the criteria. The damage was very good, but not entirely overpowered, so it scores a 9. Its moveset, which includes his Greatsword moveset and Vacuum Slice, is perfect, 10 out of 10. It also has really good stagger potential, second only to Colossal Hammers and Swords, 8 out of 10. It also only really requires one stat, which is Strength. The stat requirement is super low, and this sword can easily work in any build that specs into Strength, 10 out of 10. However, to obtain it in a normal run, you have to beat a lot of bosses to be strong enough to obtain it, so it loses a lot there, 3 out of 10. So is it viable? Yes, of course! The Gargoyle's Greatsword is awesome and it completely took me by surprise. I highly recommend this to anyone of any skill level, it's very fun.